You ever get that feeling that underneath all the noise, the daily headlines, the political arguments, there's something else going on? A much, much older conflict. A deep-seated tug-of-war that isn't really about left versus right, but something way more fundamental. Well, today we're going to explore that idea. The idea that for thousands of years, humanity has been caught between two invisible codes, two competing rule books for how we live, what we value, and ultimately where our future is headed.
All right, here's our roadmap. We're going to start by uncovering this ancient hidden conflict. Then, we'll dive into what we're calling the Code of Community. After that, we'll see how this whole battle is playing out right now, today. From there, we'll look at 5 very different potential futures, which brings us to the final, most important part: what we can do to start building a better now.
So, let's start with this massive question. What if humanity's biggest, longest-running war wasn't fought with swords and shields, but with ideas? We're going to dig into this concept of two competing sets of rules. You can almost think of them as two different operating systems for civilization that have been battling for control for thousands of years.
See, one of these codes is all about shared well-being, about the health of the group. The other, it's designed for hierarchical control, for power. And this invisible war of ideas, it's not just some dusty old history lesson. It is actively shaping everything around us right now, from our economies to our technologies to our deepest sense of what's right and wrong.
Okay, so here they are, side by side. On one hand, you have the Code of Community. This one runs on shared moral rules, on the idea of collective well-being, and this concept of being accountable to something bigger than yourself, whether that's a god, the community, or just a shared set of values. And on the other hand, you have the Code of Power. That one's built on a totally different logic. Hierarchy, getting approval from the elites at the top, and controlling resources. This is the core tension we're going to be tracing.
So where in the world did this Code of Community even come from? To really get its power today, we have to go back. We have to trace its roots through history and see how it's managed to survive and adapt over all this time.
And you can just see this pattern stretching across millennia. It's incredible. It starts way back in prehistory with these sacred ideas of reciprocity. I help you, you help me, because that's how we survive. Then, around 500 BCE, you see it get formalized in major religions with actual rules against exploitation, like releasing debts. This thread just keeps going, through early Christianity and Islam, into the Middle Ages, and then it pops up again today, in a totally secular form, as things like consumer protection laws. The language changes, the context changes, but that core idea, protecting the community from extraction, it's always there.
And take a look at this line from the Quran. The prohibition of riba, which is often translated as usury or exploitative interest, it draws this incredibly important moral line in the sand. Trade that benefits everyone, that's good, that's permitted. But interest that extracts wealth and harms the community, that's forbidden. It just goes to show how ancient and central this tension over money and morality really is.
And what's really fascinating is that this wasn't just a religious concern. Not at all. You had secular thinkers like Plato and Aristotle warning against the very same thing. For them, it wasn't about sin. It was a direct threat to the stability of the entire society. They were afraid that if the gap between debtors and creditors got too wide, the whole system would just break.
Okay, so let's fast forward. This battle did not stay in the history books. Today, right now, the conflict between the Code of Community and the Code of Power is raging all around us. It's in our economy, it's in our laws, it's even in the technology you're using to watch this.
You can see this conflict playing out so clearly across all these different domains. In economics, just think about the philosophy of a member-owned co-op versus the logic of predatory lending. Or in technology, you've got the community spirit of open-source software on one side, and the purely extractive logic of surveillance capitalism on the other. I'm telling you, once you start to see this pattern, you see it everywhere.
And today, there are these 3 massive global trends just pouring gasoline on the fire. First, and this is the big one, soaring inequality is straining social trust to its absolute breaking point. Second, technology is acting like this giant megaphone, amplifying the narratives of both codes. And third, you've got these populist movements trying to completely rewrite the definition of good, tying it to power and nationalism instead of community and shared values.
So, with all these powerful forces colliding, It brings us to the most critical question of all. Where the heck are we going? What does the future of this ancient conflict even look like? And maybe, more importantly, what role do any of us have in deciding how it turns out?
But before we get to the futures, we need to understand this really cool concept from game theory, Move 37. It comes from this legendary Go match between world champion Lee Sedol and Google's AlphaGo AI. On the 37th move, the AI made a play that was so bizarre, so creative and unexpected that it completely baffled all the human experts. It defied all conventional logic, and it changed the entire game. It's a perfect reminder that the future isn't just a straight line. It can be totally reshaped by single, strategic, game-changing choices.
So how do you even begin to map out something as complex as the future? Well, one group of researchers tried by running over 100,000 computer simulations of our global trajectory. And what they found is fascinating. The most probable outcome at 38% was basically that things just kind of muddle through. But look at the extremes. The model also showed a very real 17% chance of systemic breakdown and a smaller, but not zero, 12% chance for radical positive transformation.
So those simulations boil down to these 5 distinct scenarios. You've got conservative continuity, which is just more of the same. Then there's the extremes we saw, radical transformation on the hopeful end, where we pivot to the code of community, and systemic breakdown on the other, where everything falls apart. And then there's this little wild card. The 7% chance of an unexpected positive pivot, a sudden, surprising shift toward cooperation, a real-life Move 37.
I mean, just look at the contrast between the two extremes. It couldn't be more stark. One path leads us to a future where doing good is actually rewarded, where how we manage resources is fair and everyone has a say. The other path leads to a world where trust completely collapses, power gets consolidated in the hands of a few, and a survival of the fittest mentality takes over everything. The stakes, to put it mildly, are incredibly high.
Now, this is absolutely critical to understand. Move 37 isn't just a tool for the good guys. Both sides can make these game-changing plays. The code of community could do something amazing, like create a digital trust ledger to reward cooperation. But the code of power could use AI to fake public support for its policies, or even worse, twist the very language of community to justify grabbing more resources. This isn't just a battle of morality. It is a battle of creativity and strategy.
Okay, so if the future is really just a series of strategic choices, if it's really up for grabs, then that brings us to the most important question of all. What moves can we make? What can actually be done right now to strengthen the code of community?
The great news is we are not starting from scratch. There are proven strategies that actually work. It starts small with things like building micro-commons. Think of a neighborhood tool library or a community garden. It's a shared asset. From there, you can create trust chains, which are just ways to make all that good faith reciprocity visible and valuable. And maybe most importantly, you have to lead with story. We have to tell new, better stories that redefine success, not as how much you can accumulate for yourself, but how much you contribute to the whole.
You know, this quote it hits the nail on the head. It's the difference between talking about change and actually rolling up your sleeves to make it happen. It's about deciding you're not going to wait for an invitation, you're going to get in the room where the future is being decided.
And maybe ultimately, this is about reframing the whole idea of a reward. What if the payoff for being a good person, for contributing to your community, wasn't something you had to wait for in the next life? What if the reward was a better, fairer, more trusting reality that we can all see and feel? The reward is the world we build together, right here, right now.
And that, really, is the choice that this ancient, epic conflict presents to every single one of us. We can be passive observers and just let history happen to us. Or we can pick up the pen and decide to become active authors of the next chapter.
So what can this look like in the real world? Well, at Kamunity, we're trying to build one possible path. The entire system is designed around that core principle from the code of community. You create value for yourself by creating real, tangible value for other people. It's our attempt at writing one page of that better future, and you're absolutely welcome to join us.
But look, that's just one path. The most important work happening right now is whatever you are inspired to do to strengthen that code of community in your own world. Whether that's a small, local project or a massive, game-changing idea, the world needs more builders. We're just here to help if and when you're ready. So the real question we want to leave you with is this: what will you build first?